Well, if you watch the show, you know we're big fans of the Oversight Project. So when a public university rejected their request to see a syllabus, we knew we had to figure out what was inside. So here with more is Kyle Brosnan. He's the vice president of legal at the Oversight Project. So Kyle, thanks for joining us. We'll get to some fun Mike Howell stories maybe if we have time later. But tell us a little bit about a certain DEI-obsessed faculty member that is at UNC Chapel Hill.
Yes, thanks for having me on. So we sent a FOIA request to UNC Chapel Hill, which is a public university, and we did the unthinkable. We asked for the syllabus of a number of professors, focusing basically on whether or not they were still teaching DEI and other garbage like that in defiance of President Trump's executive order. And the professor, one of the professors that got one of our requests, went on LinkedIn and threw what can only be described as a hissy fit, saying that we were threatening academic integrity and how he felt attacked and yada, yada, yada. Well, we got the syllabus, and guess what? It's full of DEI garbage. You know, it contains classes and lectures on why diversity programs fail, and about, you know, white guilt and things like that. And so we've got other requests out there to other public universities, and we look forward to those universities complying with the law. And we're going to continue to expose DEI and other corrosive ideologies in academia, particularly at public universities.
Now, Kyle, I personally find this story flipping hilarious. I do want to like drill into the details just because it's one of those things. I mean, I taught at universities. The syllabus is not a top secret document. This is something that, in fact, you want to share to the world. And if you're teaching, you're like, why does no one read this? I wish more people would. I want to airdrop it all over campus, right, to students. So how do they even make this argument? Like, what's the argument here?
So the professor and a bunch of his buddies on the left chimed in to back him up. They claim it's intellectual property. Which, if you even think about it for a second, that's crazy. I mean, particularly at these public universities, they're funded by taxpayers. You know, especially if you're paying student loans, it's federal student loans money. You know, that it's all run by the government. And so, and you're right though, Matt. You as a professor are trusted to endow your knowledge upon your students and show off your research that you do. You should be shouting that from the rooftops. You should be wanting students to see your syllabus. But the fact that they're putting barriers up and actually pretending to be the victim of a transparency organization is just crazy.
This assistant professor, Petsko, is the one that we're talking about here. He went on to LinkedIn and post this. It's so funny. He said, keep doing the work you were trained to do. Keep educating others. Keep sharing your experiences. And don't let vague references to executive orders make you question whether you have a right to be sharing your knowledge with the world. Like, that's how they're going about justifying keeping all of this DEI nonsense in there. And it's happening at my alma mater, too. This is happening at the University of Iowa right now. There are stories right now in the news about this. So how widespread is this? How many times are we going to have to hear, oh, just keep sharing your information with the world and such?
I mean, I wish academia was still a venue where people share knowledge. It's become an indoctrination center. And that's why I think President Trump has issued the executive order going after DEI, and why his administration has really put efforts to hamp down DEI in education. I mean, the university system have been completely taken over by the left and their corrosive ideology, where they teach, young impressionable minds to hate America. And so when education has become an indoctrination factory instead of one where the pursuit of knowledge is encouraged and flourishes, it's fair game for oversight, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and it really is rich. I mean, share your knowledge, but not your syllabus, because we don't want anyone to know we're teaching at a public university. It's absolutely ridiculous. They should post all of this publicly all the time. Everyone should know exactly what the hell is there. And if I would just say to the audience, if you're sending a kid or you're thinking about going to college and you don't know exactly what's being taught in the courses, you shouldn't be going there. You should be looking at exactly the courses you're going to take and exactly what you're going to read. because that's what you're paying for at the end of the day. But I could get on my professor soapbox for a while, and we don't want to do that. We have one of the biggest stories in America, a story that is not being fully told, still ongoing, something that Oversight is at the heart of, has really been pushing on, and that is the autopen story. Now, what is the latest on that for you guys, Kyle?
Yeah, so we'll be publishing something later this week. We pulled presidential proclamations issued during the Biden administration. It's taken a little while to get every one he issued in there. There's several hundred of them. And lo and behold, we found more widespread and prolific use of the autopen. We found at least a third and a fourth different signature that the Biden White House deployed to affix his signature to these proclamations. And they're important because there are some statutes, particularly the Antiquities Act, which allows only the president to issue national monuments and declare national monuments that foreclose commerce and other companies from doing business on that land there. So and so, if President Biden is auto-penning again a proclamation that only he can issue, we get into all the same problems that we see with the pardons of whether or not somebody other than the president was exercising a non-delegable presidential power.
Well, voters obviously need to know who was actually controlling the autopen. So we've been going through the story for a few months now. You guys have been digging into this. So what are some of the next steps, at least from a whole legislative standpoint? Because I know they keep pulling people out in front of House investigators.
Yeah, some of them have showed up and pled the fifth. Particularly, President Biden's doctor pled the fifth and claimed doctor-patient privilege, which doesn't apply to Congress. And so the House can immunize him and force him to testify, at least take away the Fifth Amendment issues. He is a retired colonel in the Army, I believe, so there is a potential that he could be court-martialed if he were to be called into active duty here. Chairman Comer was making the media rounds a couple days ago saying that the folks that did show up and talk are giving contradictory statements. Wow, that's really surprising. He also hinted that Vice President Harris might be getting a subpoena from House investigators here. But I really think that what's going to happen with the autopen investigation is that the paper is going to tell the story. They need to submit written records to look at the paper trail of the authorization for each individual pardon. President Biden spoke to the New York Times a couple of weeks ago here, and it was telling in that interview in that he said he approved broad categories of people to receive pardons, but the staff would sort of work out the particulars as to which person got pardoned in a given batch here. Then that might not be legal, and that is a serious. It raises serious questions as to who indeed was exercising powers that only belong to the president. And so, if I were back on the Hill doing investigations as I did earlier in my career, those are the ones I'd be focusing on here because those are the ones that are most legally questionable.
Kyle, former Biden ambassador Mike Donnellan was just testified before was brought before the House investigators. That's a name that's deep in the Biden brain trust, but not a lot of people know. Is that significant at all? The fact that he was brought in there and had to answer some questions.
Yeah, I mean, Biden kept a very close inner circle during his long career in Washington. So he's got a series of consiglières, as we like to call them. Mike Donnellan, Steve Ricchetti, chief among them. And that one thing that you see is that his White House was kind of run a little bit differently than most do, to where your title may not necessarily correspond with the access and the power you had. Anthony Bernal, another name who I believe pled the fifth before Comer. He was the First Lady's chief of staff or communications director or something like that. And so, and Neera Tanden, who was the staff secretary, testified that when she became staff secretary, her access to the president went down. If anyone watches President Trump on TV signing executive orders, that bald guy that stands next to him and kind of reads him what he's signing, his name is Will Sharp. He's the staff secretary. He is next to the president every single day, getting him important documents to sign. Compare that to Neera Tanden, who said that she only saw him once every 6 weeks and then would get a signed decision memo authorizing certain actions there. She never saw him sign them. She doesn't know if he signed them, but it doesn't make sense from a staff secretary perspective, the lack of access that she had there. And so I think what we're learning from these interviews from people who are talking is that the Biden White House was run in a very atypical fashion, and it just sort of throws more fuel onto the fire as to who was running the country for the last 4 years.
Well, Kyle, you've made it out of the swamp, at least for a few days. He's also another 2025 Claremont Institute Lincoln Fellow. So if you have any advice for young minds out there that want to, enter the swamp, but actually want to do so in like a reasonable fashion to have some good values and some real impact, how could the Lincoln Fellowship help them with what you're going through right now?
Yeah, we've been focusing a lot on the founding, and Matt in particular gave a series of good lectures on General Washington here. And I think I just speaking with my fellows, you could get a little bit depressed at the state of the country and how we've abandoned sort of the principles of our founding and what makes the American Republic great and the greatest country on earth. And so go back to our roots, I guess, is my message. But I'm certainly pessimistic, and a lot of our discussions talk about how we have gone away from the core founding. But I'm also optimistic because we have a really good group here this year. A lot of folks with a wide divergence of backgrounds and sort of experiences and where they are in their careers here. I'm the only lawyer in the crew, so I feel like people drag on lawyers all the time, as they should, but I have to stand up for the legal profession a little bit. But I'm also optimistic by the way that we could take our country back, and the leaders in the room here with me this summer. I think there's certainly cause for optimism.
Well, we're not done yet. We're still in the middle of it here. It really just started, right? Just began, and it's going to be an interesting week. There's going to be a lot of more special guests, coming through to talk about Golden Age agenda and all that in the future. But Kyle and I, we still haven't had the beer, and he hasn't spilled the beans on Mike Howell. So Mike Howell is safe for now, but you're not going to be safe forever, right?
I'm looking forward to having that beer, Matt.
I got your lawyer here. We have your lawyer here.
It's perfect.
We're going to apply him with alcohol.
That's absolutely going to happen. You're going to come back. You're going to tell me all the stories. Kyle at It's Your Gov. Thanks so much for joining us here.
Thanks so much for having me. Take care.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with some of your replies and Sydney Sweeney right after this.